Well, good morning, everyone. Deacon Tim Wyman here. It's Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. It's a beautiful day outside, and it must be time again, once again, for the Parish Coffee Hour of Father Paul and Friends. So I want to turn it right over to our host, Father Paul. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you today. I'm sitting in my house in the office, looking over the playground and seeing some of the kids from the school out playing, and just a gorgeous day today. We'll start with a prayer, and I'll introduce our guest, and we'll get right into it then. With all that's going on with the flooding in our state, let's reach out to Mary and ask for her help. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To you we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your mercy hear and answer us. Amen. Well, our guest today is Don Clemmer. Don serves as the communications advisor for our diocese. He's also the managing editor of Crossroads. So he's one who deals with communication and with news. Unfortunately, the southern part of our diocese has been impacted by some bad news, and it's probably good to just get a little bit of an update from the church's response to the tragedy that's happened with regard to the flooding. I think many of us following it through the mass media, through the radio and TV and newspaper. What are you seeing and hearing, Don, from your standpoint? And first of all, just welcome to be with us, and and it's timely that you're with us as a kind of a news person in this time that's so dramatic for us.
Thank you, Father Paul. It's good to be with you, and I mean, I'm seeing what I think a lot of people are, which are rather disturbing photos of centers of towns, parish properties, quite submersed, and it you realize, especially at a moment like this, that these parishes are such a leaven in the communities they serve, and so they are being hardest hit as their people are being hardest hit. So they've kind of got the double crisis of helping our people in need, but also while being chest deep in water in their basements and that sort of thing. And so it's a really difficult time for the church in Eastern Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky in general. And the bishop and others have been very upfront about the need to provide aid, and one of the ways to do that, of course, is through Catholic Charities of Lexington. That's what I'm seeing.
We'll be doing, I think just about every parish will be doing a second collection, and from our standpoint, we won't just end it this Sunday. But we'll be, trying to offer whatever kind of monetary assistance would be needed. We're not sure if teams of people going down there to do the work would be helpful, or in a sense kind of be in the way of whoever's already there. But that'll be worked out as this all goes along, and the donations of food and clothing and things like that might be needed, but again, we want to trust people to be able to make their own decisions on what they do need. So we'll be doing a financial collection from the start, and what we can offer will be a big piece of the help that we can help as a diocesan church as we work together. Well, you've got kind of a dual position within our diocese, and well, maybe just want to start with what's the scope of your position as communications advisor for the diocese? What would that mean to the average bear?
It basically means the communications director figure. It's often the case in especially in smaller dioceses that you have a small staff of about one or two who are the communications going out, whether that's press releases or other items, but also publication staff. In the case of Lexington, Crossroads magazine, and fielding media inquiries as they come in, and then another big piece of my portfolio right now, building up the digital presence. So trying to there's a website rebuild underway, but also just the need to just build up the presence of the social media channels that the diocese is already using: Instagram, LinkedIn, a couple of different pages on Facebook. So those are the general outlines of it.
Sure. Yeah, I know as a communications advisor, people in that role before have been helpful to me. Every once in a while, there's a delicate issue, and there's an interview that's going to be on TV, and you can say the right thing and you can say the wrong thing, and you can say too much, and et cetera, et cetera. And the counsel that's offered, the wisdom that's offered very often by someone in your position really has made a difference, at least in my career.
Yeah.
You're also managing editor of Crossroads. What's involved with that?
Well, that's the official publication of the diocese. It's a 16-page magazine that publishes 10 times a year. Goes to registered Catholic households, and it's a really, I think, compelling way to tell the story of a compelling local church. There's definitely not a shortage of just the stories that are really worth lifting up, but whether on the cover or in some other way in those pages. And because it's monthly, except 10 times a year, with combined issues January, February, and July, August, there's a lot of telling the story, kind of through the protagonists of what are compelling narratives, as opposed to like more of like a breaking news approach that you might see in, like, say, a weekly newspaper, and there are very few of those left in dioceses. So but it's in terms of what it entails, it's from end to end on the process. I'm meeting with some of the newspaper or the magazine stakeholders next week to kind of brainstorm, like, what are the stories, what are the narratives that we should be looking at as the year continues to unfold, as we look even to next year. Once we identify those, assigning stories to specific writers for specific future issues, how those issues fit together thematically in terms of just, from the liturgical year to just culturally, what the significance of certain seasons are for us as Catholics and Americans, and also like how those intersect with the issues of that the diocese is facing, and the issues that the diocese wants to lift up in terms of, like, the pastoral plan and that sort of thing. And
pastoral plan has like a lot of subcategories, and I think you're trying to work in harmony with the subcategories by issue by issue.
And like page 1, paragraph 1 of the pastoral plan is young people in the church, and there are all kinds of ways to come at the voice and the presence and the work of shall we say, millennials on down in the life of the church, and we try to be intentional about that. It's evident on, I think, our last 2 magazine covers, and it will be evident in April as well. So yes, we do. That does inform. It's one of the pairs of goggles that we put on as we're discerning how best to tell the story of this local church.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's been your experience in the communication field before you connected with our diocese?
Well, I hearkened from diocesan media originally, pretty much right out of college. The most significant stint, though, was on the communication side, which was a stint with the the U.S. Catholic Bishops Conference, and so that was media relations again. Messaging going out, inquiries coming in, and just the lost my train of thought there. And just kind of learning about the church as it interacts with the world at that level.
Did you study communications and get a degree in that in your college career?
I was an English and communications major, and kind of I say journalism found me in college, and then the Catholic press was kind of waiting shortly thereafter. And so I have basically spent my career weaving together both the church communications side and the Catholic media side.
Do you have other clients besides our diocese?
I do some freelance editing and some freelance writing, but you don't take on the breadth of diocesan communications office and flagship publication in the plural. So it's Lexington is definitely the lion's share of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, my sense is you do a lot of your work from home in the Fort Wayne, Indiana area. What's it like to serve our diocese, but not really being on the scene, but still in touch pretty regularly?
It's a unique arrangement, one that's strangely facilitated and exacerbated at the same time by the pandemic. And it requires being very intentional about things are not going to come by osmosis, whether that's familiarity with a place or interactions like the one we're having now. And but it's an interesting time for communications in the church. Well, I mean, it's an interesting time period, but I've seen other colleagues and former colleagues kind of out in the world realize that that it's a model that can be made to work in terms of who dioceses are availing themselves to, in terms of who can do that work, but what it is particularly the arrangement or the distance or whatever it is. So
even in non-pandemic times, you'd be you'd still be living in Indiana,
Well, yes, and that's what I'm saying, is that there are at least a few like me out in the field. I can't claim the idea, but it does make for an interesting dynamic, but one that's been really fruitful to kind of engage with the local church in such a intentional way, where you're I don't know, the observer part stays with you, because it's kind of spatially what you're not stuck in, but it's where you remain.
Yeah. Sound like a nice blend of objectivity and subjectivity being right in there.
Sure.
With your heart. And you do get down periodically, don't you? It's like the schedule of monthly or something like that.
That's the non-COVID ideal. So much of the last year has been finding ways to do things safely, and that's and again, on some level, now everybody has gotten a crash course in remote work, but it's still I am looking forward to safely seeing you all as soon as possible.
Yeah. in the times that you've been serving for the diocese, how much have you been able to see? Have you been able to get to a lot of the different counties and communities? Or
it has been definitely a patchwork of experiences, but I've had really enjoyable trips, like getting out to see like Richmond and Jackson and Hazard and that, definitely tying into the, especially the work of the magazine with well, for instance, are in June of last year, we kind of had a vocations / Laudato Si themed issue of the magazine. And so we had Father Danny Taylor's ordination on the cover, but we had I'm not going to get their name right, but basically the Food Security Coalition of Hazard on as the second feature. That got into just how the challenges they face in the mountains are definitely a specific iteration of what Francis is challenging us with in Laudato Si, how food insecurity and environmental degradation and just all of these kind of fabric issues of a place play into each other, can worsen each other, and it was really good to see that up close, to see how that plays out.
what struck you the most? What's been most impressive to you? Had the deepest impression on you as you've got to know our diocese a little bit? Well, more than a little bit, but
it is such a place of creativity, and I know, and there are distinct regions, from the bluegrass to Appalachia, but like running through that is how not only is it particular to a place, but part of that particularity is that it's that Catholics are a minority, a slim minority in a lot of instances, and that you get creative because it's not a place of super abundant resources or a lot of infrastructure, and that can be freeing in terms of how it just kind of it fosters partnership after partnership inside and outside the church, in terms of being nimble enough to see the challenges of the mission and having fellow travelers who are seeing that too, and who are also willing to be creative. I mean, that's I feel like I'm circling around the word scrappy. Like it's just it's a tenacious, creative community that appreciates what a beautiful part of the world it's in.
Yeah, good. Let's talk a little bit about Crossroads itself. About how many households are receiving Crossroads?
Oh, I had that number in front of me yesterday. It's I want to say 12,500, I believe, is the current number.
Okay. What would you say would be the best service that Crossroads provides?
It's I think it's an opportunity to not just like think with the local church, but to like breathe it in the sense that like our culture likes to kind of jam other things into our frames. Like we try to understand our faith through a lens of something like secular partisan politics, and that's not how we think, and we don't spend a lot of time explaining to people oh no, we're thinking about it this way to better understand being Catholic from the inside out. It's got to be this way. And I think we're very intentional at Crossroads about kind of setting the scene and doing that kind of across the features of it, whether that's the bishop's column or the cover story or the person that we're lifting up in the Q&A interview toward the back of the issue, or even the subject matter that we're tackling in the Ask Father feature, which you contribute regularly to, and we're grateful for that. There's such a richness to the different things that we think about on a regular basis in the church, and I think the magazine is a worthwhile vehicle for trying to get at that kind of that holistic or even universal picture when we say, like, how do we understand vocation? And that plays out not just in we're ordaining a new priest, but like just the discernment that a layperson is making, navigating his or her life journey, like or how do we understand hospitality? How do we understand being light for the world? Just all of these pieces where it's just more constructive to try to invite people into the auspices of a churchy space and paint the scene from there. I realize that's a really conceptual answer, but it's all about how witness stories unlock people's hearts and foster authentic conversion.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tendency for a lot of people who are members of a parish would be how are my needs being taken care of? How's my family doing? And maybe how's my parish doing? And this gives a bigger picture of the whole diocese rather than one's own particular parish. And then it gives a picture of how do I deal with the illness that my loved one has? That might be the spiritual question that somebody's asking. And yet, Crossroads will open up some other kind of spiritual issues, like you say, what's the nature of vocation, or what's the nature of the mission of the church, or how do we move from one step of living with enthusiasm to the next step of conversion, of going deeper. So Crossroads has the ability to do that. I like to think too that in some homes they get Sports Illustrated and they get Time Magazine and they get Crossroads. I wouldn't assume that they would be getting another Catholic magazine or so. And here it is, with an attractive front cover and everything. And, there's just something really powerful about, having some Catholic literature in the home. So if it's sitting by the favorite TV chair where, occasionally a person sits and reads a newspaper and, and picks up their journals that they get. One of them is Crossroads. Our, a son and daughter-in-law come to visit their parents, and they're maybe on the downward side of super involvement in the church, and lo and behold, they see Crossroads, and it opens the door. Again, this doesn't happen every day, but I would imagine sometimes it just opens the door to a good conversation.
There's a ministry of presence piece to it. I hope that's not too grandiose a way of stating it, but I think that there really is something real to being in a person's home, and if a person engages with it, that's a way of investing in relationship with that aspect of your life and that community of believers that you're part of. So I think what you're saying is quite on point. Yeah,
and it's different, and it's a magazine. Granted, it's not going to be up to date with news flashes like a weekly newspaper would, but again, it has the ability to do in-depth and analytical reports and essays, basically, that people can find very, very helpful.
Mhm.
Now there's a Hispanic section in there too, in our Crossroads. How's that regarded by the Latino community? What are you hearing from, say even Anglos who would say, "Well, shoot, that's in there, and I can't read it. What's it doing?"
I mean, it's an essential part of it, and you're talking about trying to provide even, even a modicum of acknowledgement and like spiritual and faith enrichment to a significant and growing portion of the local church. And it's right there on page 4 of every issue, following the bishop's column and the table of contents and the saint of the month, and then you're there, and that's right where it needs to be. And no, it's absolutely essential, and we're very grateful to Yvette for her work on that, because it's just that is a lot, given just the scope and if you will, the stakes of that. And it's the reason why the diocese has also been doing El Peregrino, the 4-page newsletter, all in Spanish, which is the bishop's column and some other feature content, and that's distributed. It's not quite on a production or scale, that Crossroads is, but it's an authentic recognition of that pastoral need by the leaders of the diocese.
Mhm. Am I correct? The Hispanic column that Yvette Culp writes, that's won some national awards, hasn't it?
Yes, that's been recognized by the Catholic Media Association of the U.S. and Canada, of which we're members, and she does great work for us, and it's on some levels. There's an interesting interplay between like the kind of the free reign that she has as a columnist for us, and the fact that we're always kind of trying to land several kind of thematic planes at once in every issue. So it's like as that collaboration unfolds, like, well, we're talking about resurrection, and we're talking about ecological stewardship, and we're talking about new life, and it's the year of the family and everything else. And so it kind of a healthy range, but a range nonetheless of like, so what are you going to use this very important platform to convey? And that it's but I like even the fact that it forces us to think that way about how we're approaching everything.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, let's talk a little bit about the role you have with communications advisor. How do you work with the bishop and, for instance, our church ministers in our diocese? They call you, you call them, or how's that work?
I mean, yes, and it's there's the undeniable. Sometimes you don't know, what story is going to greet you that morning. Flooding in Eastern Kentucky, a great example, and other times, you're trying to, finesse out what the current, articulation of the pastoral mission of the diocese is. And so, a lot of my work has just kind of circled around burnishing those channels. Like, how are we reaching everybody, as as basic as like what are the email distributions like, and who's getting them, and how do they look, and what are they saying? And I mean, that's been on my plate. And then more outward, facing the social media pieces again, and then they interplay in terms of not to dwell on the magazine, but it's a big part of telling the diocese story. So,
Yeah.
like if there's something significant that's developing, there's a really good chance that there's, a voice in that narrative that should be at the center of a story, and we then literally tell the story, and that's the way they really kind of inform one another.
Mhm. What's been your experience working with the local news media, in say in Kentucky?
It's been perfectly fine. Every media environment is a little different, and relationships with media are very it's a very particular kind of thing, especially when it's kind of interinstitutional. My background and training has always been to recognize that by and large journalists are professionals who have a job to do, that I am a professional who can answer some kind of need that they might have, whether that's a question, information, or a statement, or coordinating an interview, whatever that, whatever form that takes, that can basically increase the chances that the place of the church in a given story reflects the reality that we understand. And there can be a lot of need for kind of explaining ourselves or even translating ourselves especially in an environment where the church is not like some majority piece of the ambient culture. Like people can find us kind of strange or other, and it's good to be mindful of how much we just say without realizing somebody doesn't have a frame of reference for what this thing we take for granted is, whatever that is.
If somebody would be saying, well, the media, and again, if somebody would be saying they're just looking for the sensational, how do you respond to that?
I try not to reduce to stereotypes like that. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the fact that people want people to want to read your stuff, and you don't do anybody a service by being boring. Sometimes reality, especially when you get into the like institutional minutia of certain things, can be just that. So sometimes we don't have the most exciting take on a given story or narrative to offer them. But I mean, I think respect for people and respect for the truth gets you a long way in terms of squaring that relationship. And like any relationship, it accretes over time, and you have to invest in it. You have to care to invest in it, and get to a place where it supports that sort of give and take.
Mm-hmm. How does somebody in your position balance, say, transparency? That's an important word these days, and not just something that's flipped around. It's really important, and yet the desire to protect the rights of those who are involved in a delicate situation.
I mean, I would almost just repeat that question back to you in terms of like, those are the pieces, and and that means discerning with stakeholders, and ensuring that what you present to the world is accurate, as complete as possible, but also comporting with the very the very considerations that you raise. I mean, it requires communication, and there's generally, always going to be someone else who, thank goodness, has a consideration that's going to help you more effectively communicate that.
Mhm. I think some people, honestly do have a perception that the church is secretive and self-protective. How do you address that that issue? And again, that's maybe a repetition of what we've been saying, but there might be some nuances to that too.
It's I mean, the church isn't threatened by, we're almost never threatened by the things that we feel threatened by. And so but you're right that there's entrenched culture, whether that has a whiff of like clerical privilege around it, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, a lot of that stems from, I guess, the reports of the scandalous hiding of cases of priest abusive situations, of course, and people carry that. But I think right now the church is really trying to do everything that's appropriate in terms of dealing with the public, but also dealing with all the individuals that are ever involved in these kind of situations, to have the utmost respect for them, and yet to operate within the law. And tricky thing to balance.
I mean, and it's just this really kind of painful, very painful narrative that we're unspooling and working numerous layers of it at once, from the education and awareness piece around how an issue like that works, the institutional, if you want to call it, house cleaning dimension of it, exhibited, for instance, last year by the independent report commissioned upon reviewing the personnel files, to it's truth and reconciliation work, and that is long, and that is unpleasant, and that is usually the only really reliable way to get to a place of justice and healing. And that's but yeah, we're on that road.
Yeah, it's a ministry, the ministry of communication. It's a ministry of being able to do that in a way that helps the healing process, being able to communicate enough and to do it with the truth, but also with the appropriate respect. Deacon Tim, has anything come in terms of questions or comments?
No, nothing's come in, but actually I have a question, if you don't mind interjecting it here. And I actually put it in the chat. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but Don, you're familiar with the cancel culture that's out there. And I'm just curious, the church is more, this goes back, decade or longer now, that the church is moving more and more in a position of, when we preach the truth of the gospel, it runs very contrary to a lot of the cultural directions that's out there. And I'm just curious, either in the work you're doing or just for the church in general, how do we respond to that? And again, I'm thinking even the person who's sitting in the pew who just wants to, preach the truth, but preach it with love. And how do we, that's a pretty good mountain we're having to climb right now in the culture.
I mean, I find that there's aspects of our teaching that are not signposts to be blown past. And by that, I mean, like, love one another as I have loved you, and the dignity of the human person. I think, I mean, personally, think one of the ways to be in a space where maybe the wider culture can even hear us is to evince real credibility around it has to come from an authentic place, like, that we really do love everybody, and that it's concrete and palpable. You can't phone that part of it in. And I think that is exemplified in somebody like Francis, who at once is the Pope. Like, he teaches what the church teaches, but he evinces that authentic concern and love for people in intangibles, in little gestures, but also in the ways that he's challenging us to a kind of pastoral conversion. And like pastoral theology, and I don't remember who said this originally, is that's not like some side category for him. Like, theology has to be pastoral and has to be about what people out in the world are hearing and getting from you. Otherwise you are kind of your own worst enemy as somebody trying to proclaim the gospel to the ends of the earth. And kind of back to the question, like there's the temptation to be defensive on this, or just a lot of the things that we've discussed here today. And that's just such a kind of self-defeating feedback loop. Like, I'm struck by the saints who've written about like humility and patience from the standpoint of perfectly good people are going to think, might think that you're just awful, but don't expend all the energy trying to straighten them out about you. Like, explain yourself, but you're probably going to take the hit, and that's not a defensive act. That's not a defiant act. Oh, it has to be a loving act. And and
I think that what I'm hearing as I think about this through, and I hear you saying it, is first, especially when you've done one-on-one like relationship, you have to build that relationship that's based on mutual respect and love, and trust the Holy Spirit to help us. Let's find our common ground. Let's find the things that we unite on, and we ultimately find out that there's a whole lot more. Most of the time, there's a whole lot more that unites us than divides us. And but yeah, it's such a certainly harder. If you go back decade by decade, the last 5 decades, it's gotten harder and harder to be able to have that. It's so challenging, especially with the rise of social media, which it's almost like people get on social media, they're different, almost different communication there. So that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of just get your take on that. But I appreciate that. It's a difficult thing for not only you guys, those that have to deal with formal communications and proclamation of what the church is thinking and how we think, but also it's for the person in the pew. It's a very difficult place to be in too sometimes. So,
well, key words in the church these days are dialogue, encounter. Yeah, and they're all related to communication.
So that's true.
It's just another level that you're involved in.
Yeah.
What do you think every pastor or church leader needs to know about communicating with the media? With the local media. I'll start by saying, if you're interviewed for 20 minutes by somebody who's going to be showing you on the TV news at 6:30, assume you'll be on for 10 seconds.
3 seconds. Yeah.
So be humble about it,
And again, I think inter-institutional awareness is a good thing to have. Like, the church has certain language and certain rules and ways we do, and news media have their own conventions. And so I would say yes, that you get at the heart of it, Father Paul, that you have to understand the space that you're entering, and the fact that yes, you're going to appear in a single digit seconds, soundbite form, and and with your picture telling the story as much as your words. I mean, that would be one essential realization of that. And there are many others in terms of like what the rules of the road are.
I grew up, back in the days of black and white TV, and one of the programs was Dragnet with Joe Friday. And as a detective, he'd always be interviewing people, and he would be saying, "Just the facts, man, just the facts." And I think again, as we're being interviewed, it's to give just the facts rather than too much in the way of our spin or our wonderful, magnificent insight or something like that. But just to be fairly straightforward with whatever's being asked, to have a response.
Well, we do. Yeah, we do have a message, and it's a great one.
Yep. Other tips in terms of that, you'd say there's like X amount of points to watch out for, and I don't know how many you got in your head that you can maybe offer, in addition to a couple of things I named that are pretty obvious, and they're not the enemy. They're
not the enemy is a great rule. But again, they are professionals with a job, and a job that has certain needs, and when we communicate well with them, that helps them, and that can help everyone.
We've had one question come in. Will Crossroads be doing some coverage of the Pope's trip to Iraq?
That's a good question. So we're in the process now of squaring away the last of the April issue, and the Pope is in Iraq now and will be for at least the next few days. And we'll have to figure out what form that takes, just in terms of squaring the very hyper local nature of our coverage with what is a consequential and historic event in the life of the Universal Church.
Okay, a couple more questions, that kind of get us into a general field. I noticed with our newspaper, it's less pages than it used to be. And some magazines used to be weekly or now monthly.
Mm-hmm.
With some of this downward trend, because so much is, electronically these days, how are church newspapers and magazines being affected by this downward trend?
I mean, we're part of that. We're part of that world. I mean, when I first started working in the Catholic press, there was certainly kind of that narrative of like, this diocese is only they were a weekly, now they're only 2 times a month, and that's continued. But I think with the realization of like, it's not just our media. 15 years ago it was harder to see that like your local daily was also getting hollowed out and was under new, had been purchased or whatever but that's more evident. So on some levels the Catholic press has been feeling that squeeze even longer, and I don't think there are easy answers in sight in terms of the fact that the internet kind of took the business model away, the advertising that had been the purview of our print media for a long time. And so it really forces some kind of elemental questions around, the church has to intentionally choose to invest in it, basically, to say that this is integral to how we live out our mission, that it's not a nicety on the side, like, oh well, if we can have that, but it's really not, really not in the budget, that's it's a journey we've been walking for a while as the church, I think, without even being entirely mindful of that fact. As again, whether it's a church newsroom or a secular one, there's a lot that's fallen by the wayside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things too. If the church newspaper, the church magazine gives an opportunity to enter into a theme in a different kind of way than an internet message would be, and it's also like calling for somebody to work with it, to take it seriously, and again, that's not for everybody, but also we could say there is something for everybody, and say over the course of X amount of months, with a publication to say something like Crossroads, there's something that could grab just about everybody, but they're going to be different things. It's striking. I imagine a lot of people who are lay members of the church would not realize that in the Second Vatican Council, there was a document on communications. I think a degree on communications. Can you comment on that?
I think it gets at what I just said, that it's rolled up in the rest of the mission, and Vatican II was all about what our mission is as the body of Christ in the world, and the bishops, as with so much of Vatican II, I mean, it still reads very fresh and very urgent, and has some really helpful guidance. It's good to circle back and see what they say about the responsibility to be out there, to be utilizing these things, and to kind of model using them for good, I guess. And I looking back at it recently, I was really struck by how much they recognize that media can be used for ill ends, and I think we generally get stuck on the content level with that, like it can be profane secular content, or it can be good churchy content, like that's using. And I think that's just that I think you need to keep going up the pyramid in terms of like how are you using this for good. Like you can ostensibly be a religious brand and still be inflicting, and still be incredibly destructive in terms of how you utilize media. And I think that challenges us, and I think that stands as kind of a possible correction, kind of looking outwardly, like if we had widespread buy-in on like, gee, I shouldn't be using this, the power of this to distort, to harm, to outright fabricate. I think you can make the case that, as John the 23rd put it, the human sojourn in this world would be less sad. And so yeah, so much goes through the media, and the Council Fathers had it right.
Here's again a speculative, fun question. I hope if St. Paul would be living today in our time, how would he be using the mass media?
Oh gosh. block. No, he would oh gosh. I think Paul would be out in front. It's hard to separate the message from, I don't want to say the personality, but definitely the spirit, delivering the message with him. And but it doesn't take a lot of imagination to pull out epistle and insert in, whatever would be just the practical, contemporary, real way to reach his people, whatever form that takes.
Yeah, I very often speak of St. Paul as a master strategist, because he always wanted to evangelize in seaport towns where people would be coming in and going out, and if they would catch the message of Christianity, they could take it with them as they go back to where they came from, or where they're going in terms of their work or leisure or whatever. So there was something about St. Paul that was really wise in these ways, and and certainly his wisdom today would be to do everything possible to to reach people, and using the mass media would be there. Well, here's a question that's one more level. What's it like to live so close to Notre Dame? You're in Fort Wayne, and South Bend's, I guess, maybe an hour away or something like that.
It's a couple hours away. I mean, it's Notre Dame. It's and I mean, there are ways in which Lexington, like some of the partnerships that like we have through our evangelization office at the Chancery, kind of brings me into closer contact with Notre Dame and the good work that's happening at the McGrath Institute and other, the School of Business and elsewhere. Like, there's a lot to like there. And I most of the time, I get my Notre Dame by way of Lexington. So it's that's a happy thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just want to thank you for your ministry and for being with us today.
My pleasure.
It really is a ministry. It's more than a job. It's helping us to do what we're wanting to do in terms of evangelizing and helping our communities to grow and truly be in the body of Christ. So we need people doing what you do. If it wasn't somebody like you, or if it was somebody who's a pretty good person who would not have the background or the credentials, that's not enough in this day and age. We need people who have the experience and have the expertise. So thank you so much for serving in our diocese and helping our communications to spread the good news, and to even help us find the good news in the midst of the difficult news.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Deacon Tim, we're pretty much towards the end, and I think we're set for next week. We'll be interviewing 3 of our local folks with regard to our bereavement ministry. So we'll be talking with Kathy Meng and Gabrielle, and from our music ministry, and also Cindy Kopsik. So it should be a good program. Our bereavement ministry is very important, and we'll be looking at different aspects of it and hearing these ladies' stories as they have been impacted by the teamwork involved, but also the ministry to people in the time frame of funeral. So again, an important topic, and one that's touching on our adaptations that we're making in pandemic days, but also that gives us an idea of the scope of this great ministry as it's been coping during the pandemic days, but also as when it's in full blast, it's magnificent. So we look forward to you joining us next week for that program.
All right. Well, thank you, Father Paul. Thank you, Don. And it's been another great coffee hour with the parish. Hope everybody's enjoyed it. We'll be back next week at the same time, Thursday at 10 a.m. right here on our live stream. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the outdoors.